So many of my videos have been talking about the power of self-mastery. So there was a subscriber who actually asked me this question. So Stuart, what about this entire thing about competency? How do we actually develop a high level of competency in order to back up that confidence in the first place? So I get where the subscriber is coming from. It's quite tough to just say, oh, build up your confidence and everything will be hunky-dory. The truth is, there is another side of that coin. And in order for us to build up the confidence and the skills, we first of all need to have a learning methodology, which I'm about to lay out for you. So if you are interested in finding out a little bit more about this, please click the like and subscribe button because it will do you very well in enhancing your abilities to learn as an entrepreneur, as a professional. So if you add this up, it's going to probably accelerate your ability to learn far better than before. So first thing that I'd like to highlight is the idea that there are two different kinds of goals, right? We've got performance goals, which are things that we do because we know what we're doing. And then there are learning goals. It's the kind of goal that we set when we don't know what we're doing. So that when you have an issue trying to set the right kinds of goals, it's probably because you're attempting to do a performance goal, but you don't know what really to do. So you need to default back into learning goal. So as you're setting a learning goal, what do? For most people, they think about reading up on the internet. Now, the problem with reading up on the internet is that there's going to be a huge amount of information that is disparate. You know, there are a lot of things which you don't quite understand and you can't assess whether or not they're factual in the first place, which is one of the reasons why I prefer to go to Google Scholar to identify papers that are relevant for my needs. Not everybody likes reading empirical research. I don't particularly like reading them too, because some authors use a very vague title and it requires a lot of digging through. In fact, I spent about an hour just reading through about 7 articles that finally I realized didn't have any relevance to me. So that aside, if you happen to have very good empirical background in research, then that might be something worthwhile doing. However, I also find that it's going to be difficult to just use that sustainably. Nowadays, you've got ChatGPT. You can go in and say, highlight the top research in such and such an area and give me the references. So you can utilize that to get a little bit clearer because they can statistically collect this information for your learning purposes. Essentially, when you're doing this reading, you're tapping into one part of the learning engine, which is reading. So you can read research papers, you can read journal articles, you can also read books where, go to Amazon.com, just identify a whole list of books that you can read, but please don't just read one. The reason for not just reading one book is because reading one book gives you one perspective, but there might be hundreds of different kinds of perspectives, and all you really need is one different perspective to completely shift your paradigm. And at the same time, it's necessary for you to recognize that these books are not always going to give you accurate information. You need to triangulate across different kinds of experts in order to create something viable and valuable. Number 2, I'll actually go out and talk to other people. These people tend to have experience, they know what they're doing, they know what they're saying, and as a result, I gather information from a practical standpoint because of their past experience. Now, not everybody is willing to open up a conversation with you unless you become a person who's valued. So how do you become a person who's valued? Increase your knowledge, enhance your reading, maximize whatever it is that you have, and then see what kind of practical environment you can use in order to share this with other people. Sometimes I find that my prior learning actually assists me in expanding my network. How many entrepreneurs actually experience anxiety, for example, and they seek me out for some anxiety assistance? And as a result, I build a connection. This connection translates into something much bigger, and because of that, it creates the sense that I am capable of maintaining a peer-to-peer connection. It's not like I'm a vendor, which puts a distance, right? I am now someone who's a partner, I'm a peer, and we can share things together in spite of the fact that they might be far more highly successful than I am in certain areas. I do happen to have a little bit of leverage that can help them in the areas that they need. The third area where I go after information is obviously through videos like this one. And again, you need to be able to curate the right kind of audience. Truth be told, on YouTube, there are a lot of people who are not found. And because they're not found, you got to dig a little bit deeper by searching through all of those videos. And sometimes that may not yield very much. So as a result of that, seeking out information that is valuable and that can transform your knowledge is going to be far and few between. However, I do find that there are key speakers, those who are attempting to democratize the knowledge, people on the internet, people on YouTube who are actually giving a huge amount of value. Jordan Peterson, Andrew Huberman, amongst other people. There are a whole range of them. You can go up on the internet, search for those who've got a few million subscribers, and you'll probably be able to notice, and you'll probably be able to discover how they are creating. And if you go on the internet and you find some of these amazing people who are sharing this information, subscribe to them and keep in tow with them. Now, of course, with the ebb and tide of the internet, sometimes they fall out of favor, sometimes they stop producing content. But when they do produce content, go and consume it and perhaps interact with them, because they're probably not experiencing enough creative flow to be able to generate the kind of videos that are going to be popular for their own needs. So I highly recommend that you establish a collaborative relationship, whether you're meeting someone in person or whether you're online on YouTube. Comment, interact with them, and utilize that as a relationship building process so that you can also come across as a peer to them. So again, these are just the sources of learning. Here's the process that I'll lay out in terms of actually learning. Number one, don't read word for word. When you read word for word, you're slowing down your process. I never read word for word unless I have to dive deep. And the only way I can decide to dive deep is, firstly, I got all my information at my fingertips already. It means that I need to take 10, 20, 30 different disparate pieces of information, draw them in, and then begin to decide which of the most important parts or which priorities of learning will be critical for me, and I'll make a list of those. Now, as I read broadly, I'm not reading word for word, I'm reading for the ideas. So most of the time, people tend to read only word for word and line for line. That might be useful if you have the right kinds of skills and strategies. I'll talk about that in a short while. But I'll start off with high chunk information and then go down to the details so that I can get a sense of the direction in which I'm going. Number two, always identify your purpose. Now, probably you'll want to identify your purpose before you even read, but I find that reading broadly and then allowing the idea or the direction to solidify itself is also quite a helpful thing. So this morning I read 10 articles. I am letting it distill because I'll be busy doing this video. I'll be doing some other things during this weekend, and I'll need to be able to curate my thought pattern, right? So as I do that, something will pop up in my mind and I will get inspired and I'll put on my video and continue doing my recordings. So let it simmer for a while and then go, what can I do with this information? And it'll probably point you in a direction. Now, when you start pointing yourself in that direction though, you'll need to start having a sheet of paper. Normally, I'll have a sheet of A4 paper, or I'll have my notebooks in tow. I'll start writing down all of these ideas by listing down connections across disparate ideas. Now, the moment you take two different ideas and you link them together in some form of logic or some kind of creative imagination, you are utilizing a technique in creativity called synectics. Now, this approach is very powerful because it allows you to train up your connectedness skill that enables you to see beyond the straightforward things that are out there already. It means that you can generate better knowledge, better know-how, and this can serve you in the future. Now, once I've got all of these ideas on paper, I'm going to dive deep. And this is probably the part which confuses most people. The starting point that I'll use is taking up a book, and then I will start reading it in this particular fashion. So in here, I've got a book called Performance Management. It's a pretty old book, but typically I would have prepared my book so that it's easy to flip. And here's how I typically do it. Now, you get a point. Now, when I do this, it probably takes me a couple of minutes, and we're probably going to speed up that clip. We're going to take a couple of minutes to go through the book once through so that I can get a sense of whether or not any of these fits with my purpose. Now, this is crucial because a lot of people, I find, end up reading for the sake of just reading, just simply because it's page 1 to page 200. It means everything is important. The truth is, it's not. And all you need really is 15%, 20% of the information that fits with your purpose. Without having clarity of what your purpose is in the first place, doing this wouldn't yield you any result. And mind you, I don't do that once. I do that at least 10 to 15 times across the span of half an hour. And because I've done that, the idea of familiarity, the frequency, the repetition that I go through. This enables me to pick up common information that I can then utilize over and over and over again. My mind gets more and more familiarized with the content, and more importantly, my brain gets structured in the way the author intended me to consume his or her information. So once I've got that inside my mental scaffold, I take out a sheet of paper and I start drafting out what I have read. Sometimes I may need to refer to it because I'm not superhuman. I don't remember all the studies. I'll pick up some points, a certain table, for example, right? And a certain diagram that keeps recurring. I will literally pause, copy that out onto my sheet of paper, and utilize that as a reference point later on. Sometimes I can use mind maps, sometimes I can use concept maps, but along the way, as I'm collecting this information, the more information I get, the more information I can play around with. One of the things that I learned about the brain is that the brain learns from what's different, but only recognizes what's the same. So I'm going to leverage that principle. Every time I'm going through another book on performance management, I'll take a look at what I've already found out, and then is overlapping with the information in the old book. In which case, what I ought to do is just skip those things because there's not going to be very much difference or any leverage. This way, every time I take a new book from an old area of interest, that's going to help me to speed up my learning, and I'm going to be able to read much more relevant information that I need rather than information that I no longer need. So as I'm doing this, I have more and more sheets of paper and information curated in my notebooks that I can refer to from time to time. And this is where you can read the book Second Brain by Tiago Forte, and it will share with you some strategies by which you can dump all of this into Notion template or some other kind of a database that can help you to refer back when you do need it. In my case, I don't need to have a second brain necessarily. I only need enough information to have a working memory that helps me to produce videos, helps me to produce talks, and stuff like that. Other than that, everything is locked in my unconscious mind. I trust my brain. My brain has got a fantastic capacity, as yours probably has. However, in order for you to develop the confidence and the self-belief, you need to put yourself in the line of learning fire. Go after it. Read as much as you can, learn as much as you can, curate that information, and then learn how to spread it to other people by sharing it with other people. Tell them, hey, yesterday I just read this amazing book. It had 5 key points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then they might be amazed or they might disagree. And that might spark off, based on the feedback, new ideas about new purpose and what you ought to be reading, maybe even the same book. So they might argue with you and say, that's not correct because of certain kind of logical inconsistencies. You go, okay, that's interesting. I'll take that. I'll bear that in mind. Go back to the book, read it one more time. How long is it going to take? Now it's probably going to take you 10 minutes. And once you've found out that information, you can move on to other areas of learning. Now, I tend to do this under a timer. So I will not spend a weekend reading one book. I'll spend maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes reading and gathering whatever it is that I feel I need. I'm not going to sit down and read everything word for word. I'll go idea by idea. I'll take the concept. I'll get frameworks. Typically, I find that the most powerful ones that move the needle for me would be frameworks and structures. So the moment I see a framework like the one I showed you earlier on, I will then compare it with other kinds of frameworks that exist on Google Images. I'll type in whatever topic, framework, and then I'll put it into Google Images, and usually that spits out a huge amount of information that I can visually triangulate, make sense of, because there'll be arrows, causal loops, process points, and this gives me a better idea of the information that is there, refines my purpose, and therefore allows me to read other books even more. So you can tell it's a bit of a cycle. The more I do this, the more competent I become, the more skilled I become, the more fascinated I am with that area of knowledge, and the more skills I can utilize in order to achieve results. And once I can achieve results, my sense of self-efficacy, my sense of self-confidence actually goes up. And then this becomes a virtuous cycle. So I hope that this has been interesting and useful for you. And if you want to develop this skill set for reading and developing new ideas, just go down to comments and type in reading, and I'll see how many people actually do respond. If you do, then we might be able to do something together. So if you have benefited from this and you've gotten some interesting nuggets about learning, developing your competency and skill sets, how you can go about doing this and the kinds of people you need to meet in order to do this. So if you like this video, please click the like and subscribe button so that we can get out to more people. This way, as a community, we can elevate people to a level beyond suffering and challenge so that they can take more actions for abundance. See you soon.